How's everyone doing? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. So today we're continuing our conversation of, is AI profitable? Yesterday we started off with the paradox of generative AI with a blog post from PCBB. Today we're going to be looking at an MIT report that just came out recently. So I'm going to bring this up real quick. So this is what we started off with yesterday, cracking the generative AI paradox, this blog post from PCBB. So if you have not had a chance to watch yesterday's episode, please go back and check out part one. So yesterday's episode was basically laying the groundwork for what we're going to talk about in this four-part series this week. And this takes us to this. I wanted to show everybody this to kind of kick us off here. So this is the Gartner, basically technology maturity life cycle, if you will. And it's also known as the hype cycle. So you start out here at the bottom and you have the technology trigger, right? So in this case, it would be November of, 2022, I think. November 2022, OpenAI gets released by ChatGPT. Or I'm sorry, ChatGPT gets released by OpenAI. That is your technology trigger. And so far, we have seen this explosion of hype related around the whole AI topic. And I would say that these reports that we're going through this week basically show you that, we may be around the peak of inflated expectations. I'm not totally sure about that, but I think we're probably getting close. And then after we get through this peak of inflated expectations, we come right back down to the trough of disillusionment. And then that brings us up the slope of enlightenment when the technology actually starts to work. And then we hit the plateau of productivity. And this is the life cycle for every technological breakthrough, technological innovation, new technology, anything that comes through. This is where it comes from. This is why the Gartner hype cycle here is so spot on, because this is what happens. And I would just remind people real quick that, we saw the same thing in the 90s with the internet. The internet started to really come out early 90s, but then, between 1995 and 2000 was really the land of dial-up. Broadband wasn't really a thing yet unless you had somebody who was really looking to spend an absolute fortune. And so it took a while for the infrastructure of the internet, the fiber optic cables to get laid or to get laid in, and for a lot of the just a lot of the overall infrastructure that we know of the internet to get put in place to speed it up and turn it in what it is today, so that we could go from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 to Web 3.0, basically get to the Internet of Things. It took a while to get to that, and I think you're seeing a lot of the same things here with AI. We're kind of in that what I would call the dial-up phase of AI. Where the famous sound you heard from dialing, going through the fax line to dial up to try to connect to the internet back in the late 90s. Anybody who was around for that, like yours truly, remembers that. You'll never forget that sound. But anyway, okay, so here's like I said, so here's the hype cycle where I think we're at here. We've had the technology trigger. We are way up here at the question is, have we reached the peak of the inflated expectations? I'm not sure we're definitely ascending rather quickly. I would say we might be up here, maybe not quite to the peak yet. But anyway, so we're about to head back down into the trough of disillusionment, which could mean the bursting of the AI bubble in the stock market. Which is again, remember, we had the .com bubble, which blew up in 2000, and it is very plausible right now, looking at a lot of these tech stocks, that yes, we very much are in an AI bubble, and that bubble could burst. So we'll, it's like I said, we'll see. I'm not making any predictions just yet, but okay. So now our report of the day here. So we are looking at this report that was just released from MIT recently. This is called the GenAI Divide: State of AI in Business in 2025. So let's go down here. So we have the contents, executive summary, and it goes through the wrong side of the generative AI divide: high adoption, low transformation. Number 3, why pilots stall, the learning gap behind the divide. Number 4, crossing the generative AI divide, how the best builders succeed. Number 5, crossing the generative AI divide, how the best buyers succeed. And then number 6, conclusion, bridging the generative AI divide. Now, I'm not, again, we don't have the time to go through this whole report. That would probably take an hour and a half to go through it all. So what I'm going to read to everybody today is just, we're going to go through the executive summary, and then we're going to go through the conclusion of the report, just so everybody could get to the bottom line, right, as it were. So let's look at the executive summary here. So despite $30 to $40 billion in enterprise investment into generative AI, this report uncovers a surprising result in that 95% of organizations are getting zero return. Let me say that again. 95% of organizations are getting zero return. Not a little bit, zero. The outcomes are so starkly divided across both buyers, enterprises, mid-market, small to medium-sized businesses, and builders, startups, vendors, consultancies, that we call it the generative AI divide. Just 5% of integrated AI pilots are extracting millions in value, while the vast majority remain stuck with no measurable P&L impact. This divide does not seem to be driven by model quality or regulation, but seems to be determined by approach. Tools like ChatGPT and Copilot are widely adopted. Over 80% of organizations have explored or piloted them, and nearly 40% report deployment. But these tools primarily enhance individual productivity, not P&L performance. Meanwhile, enterprise-grade systems, custom or vendor sold, are being quietly rejected. 60% of organizations evaluated such tools, but only 20% reached pilot stage, and just 5% reached production. Most fail due to brittle workflows, lack of contextual learning, and misalignment with day-to-day operations. From our interviews, surveys, and analysis of 300 public implementations, 4 patterns emerged that define the generative AI divide. Number 1, limited disruption. Only 2 of 8 major sectors show meaningful structural change. Number 2, enterprise paradox. Big firms lead in pilot volume but lag in scale up. Number 3, investment bias. Budgets favor visible top-line functions over high ROI back office. And number 4, implementation advantage. External partnerships see twice the success rate of internal builds. So just a couple quick notes on number 3, investment bias. Budgets favor visible top-line functions over high return on investment back office. In this instance, with this technology, I would say yes, absolutely, because the price tag is so big that you need this to show top line function. You need this to make a big splash because of the amount of money you're investing in it. That's how these things work. Number 4, implementation advantage. External partnerships see twice the success rate of internal builds. Yes, I would concur with that wholeheartedly. So. Okay, so the core barrier to scaling is not infrastructure, regulation, or talent. It is learning. Most generative AI systems do not retain feedback, adapt to context, or improve over time. A small group of vendors and buyers are achieving faster progress by addressing these limitations directly. Buyers who succeed demand process-specific customization and evaluation tools based on business outcomes rather than software benchmarks. They expect systems that integrate with existing processes and improve over time. Vendors meeting these expectations are securing multi-million-dollar deployments within months. While most implementations don't drive headcount reduction, organizations that have crossed the generative AI divide are beginning to see selective workforce impacts in customer support, software engineering, and administrative functions. In addition, the highest performing organizations report measurable savings from reduced BPO spending and external agency use, particularly in back office operations. Others cite improved customer retention and sales conversion through automated outreach and intelligent follow-up systems. These early results suggest that learning-capable systems, when targeted at specific processes, can deliver real value even without major organizational restructuring. So, but let's shoot down here to The conclusion. So, bridging the generative AI divide. So, organizations that successfully cross the generative AI divide do three things differently. They buy rather than build, empower line managers rather than central labs, and select tools that integrate deeply while adapting over time. The most forward thinking organizations are already experimenting with agentic systems that can learn, remember, and act autonomously within defined parameters. This transition marks not just a shift in tooling, but the emergence of an agentic web, a persistent, interconnected layer of learning systems that collaborate across vendors, domains, and interfaces. Where today's enterprise stack is defined by siloed SaaS tools and static workflows, the agentic web replaces these with dynamic agents capable of negotiating tasks, sharing context, and coordinating action across the enterprise. Just as the original web decentralized published in commerce, the agentic web decentralizes action, moving from prompts to autonomous protocol-driven coordination. Systems like Nanda, MCP, and A2A represent early infrastructure for this web, enabling organizations to compose workflows not from code, but from agent capabilities and interactions. As enterprises begin locking in vendor relationships and feedback loops through 2026, the window to cross the generative AI divide is rapidly narrowing. The next wave of adoption will be won not by the flashiest models, but by the systems that learn and remember, and or by systems that are custom built for a specific process. The shift from building to buying, combined with the rise of prosumer adoption and the emergence of agentic capabilities, creates unprecedented opportunity for vendors who can deliver learning capable, deeply integrated AI systems. The organizations and vendors that recognize and act on these patterns will establish the dominant positions in the post-pilot AI economy on the right side of the generative AI divide. For organizations currently trapped on the wrong side, the path forward is clear. Stop investing in static tools that require constant prompting. Start partnering with vendors who offer custom systems and focus on workflow integration over flashy demos. The generative AI divide is not permanent, but crossing it requires fundamentally different choices about technology, partnerships, and organizational design. Now, all of that sounds fantastic, right? It sounds like this great vision for, if you want to call that Web 4.0, the agentic web. That all sounds great and everything, okay? But here's the problem. For all of these companies that spent 30 to 40 billion dollars, and you've got OpenAI right now, running all over the place, basically saying that, oh, well, we're going to invest $1 trillion in building all this, that, and the other thing and everything else. And then it's very difficult for these companies to keep spending money on this. And sooner or later, we're going to get back to this. We're going to hit this peak of inflated expectations, and we're going to come back down through the trough of disillusionment. And what's going to happen is a lot of these companies are basically going to say, you know what, we just spent 50 million, $100 million, $300 million, and we got bupkis. We got nothing for it. And, and now you want us to go invest more money in, to break through the generative AI divide. They're going to go back to the consultant and say, yeah, man, that's not what you sold us on. You sold us on, we invest this money into generative AI and we're going to have all these fabulous results. You didn't say, oops, they meant that you had to break through this divide and get into the agentic web. They didn't know that. No, that's not how it's sold. So again, I think you are going to start to see, as this stuff does not deliver results, you're going to see a lot of hesitation on the part of companies. You're going to see a lot of companies pump the brakes and say, maybe we're not going to spend so much money right out of the gate until we're sure that this thing really delivers on. And again, just look at this chart here. So you have two things here. You have general purpose LLMs, in other words, language learning models. And then you have embedded or task specific generative AI. Investigated, 80% for general purpose LLMs and 60% for embedded or task specific generative AI. Then we move from investigated to piloted. Piloted, we drop from with general purpose LLMs, we go from 80% investigated to 50% piloted to 40% successfully implemented. That's fine. LLMs are much further along in the technology path, and LLMs are here. They're kind of going up the slope of enlightenment at this point. The LLMs crashed, now they've come back. But whereas the embedded or task-specific generative AI, where it's 60% investigated, 20% piloted, and only 5% successfully implemented. So not a fantastic, not a stellar track record here without a doubt. Now, so like I said, we've kind of presented this. Now, the next part 3, we're going to take a look at this report from McKinsey, the super agency in the workplace. And then part 4, we're going to look at beyond the hype, unlocking value from the AI revolution. I think people will find this last part in particularly very, very interesting. We're going to see what McKinsey has to say on the subject here in the next episode. But I will wrap up by saying, if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that really helps the channel. Remember, we are on YouTube, or Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, as I always love getting back to everybody. And as always, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. Definitely check out part 1 and stick around for parts 3 and 4 if you haven't checked those out yet. But anyway, have a great day out there, everybody. Thank you for listening, and I will see you again real soon.